Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Monday Night with Caye for Judge. We're Facebook Live, and I'm joined in the studio with our Chief of Staff and Secretary of the Caye for Judge Committee, Kevin McGuire. Preliminarily, we want to put the disclaimer out there that this program is being paid for by the Caye for Judge Committee, Joseph Senko, the Treasurer, and it's authorized by the Caye for Judge Committee, our Vice Chair, Tammy Gates Caye. We're going to be talking about four things. We welcome our audience in Allegheny County and beyond to ask any questions. We'll queue it up. We're going to be talking access to justice, juvenile justice, jury duty reforms, and then finally we're going to wrap it up with community-based regional specialty courts. Again, I'm joined in the studio with our Secretary and Vice Chair, Kevin McGuire. My name is Bill Caye. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas in Allegheny County. I'm the endorsed Democratic and Allegheny County Labor Council, and a slew of other endorsements. You can follow up on our campaign with the Caye for Judge Committee at williamcaye.com. Our website, it has a lot of information. You can interact with our campaign. You can follow us on Facebook. We're at Caye for Judge. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We're going to now take a short break, and we're going to get back to you with some questions and some feedback. Thank you. Our courts have to reflect our communities. I endeavor to bring that experience in the community for our county to serve all citizens with equal justice every time. I understand the compelling issues of inclusivity and diversity in our court system, and that's why I am passionate about bringing juror reform. I'm Bill Caye, and I'm asking for your vote for judge for the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas on May 18th. So we're back in the studio on Monday nights with the Caye for Judge Committee, and we're talking Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas. I'm joined by my secretary, Kevin McGuire, and we're welcoming all of our audience out there in Facebook to join us and ask any questions. Some of the questions that I've been getting out on the campaign trail, Kevin, talk about accessible justice and what that means to the average citizen. Frankly, I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas to bring fair and equitable justice to every citizen every time. That starts with the initial process. You know, people are coming into the system without representation. As we know, the Constitution provides counsel in criminal and juvenile matters, but there are many individuals that cannot afford legal representation. Part of my Access to Justice platform is to utilize our law school and some of our practitioners to join forces and provide affordable legal representation, let's say in landlord-tenant disputes or in commercial business disputes, even in the courts of common pleas where we have certified legal interns that can go in there and represent individuals that would not otherwise have the resources to pay for lawyers in the private sector. I've done that in my career. It's called pro bono work. We have a lot of law firms in downtown Pittsburgh that have employed lots of first and second year lawyers that have been licensed. I think tying it into perhaps joining forces with the law schools to give that experiential learning would allow people greater access to justice, and it would level the playing field, again, to bring fair and equitable justice to every citizen every time. Kevin, you've been involved as a private business owner and a leader of employees. Can you tell us of an instance in the justice system or in litigation where you felt that the accessibility to the courts was hampered by some disjunct or lack of honest communication?
Well, my experience has been when I was asked to serve on a jury, and I would spend in three different instances, I spent an entire day waiting to see if I would be called for jury duty. Regrettably, in all three instances, what I experienced was the fact that because of my background in business, the fact that my oldest son is a police officer, impacted the decision as to whether or not I was going to be seated as a member of the jury. And you want to fulfill your civic duty because the system only works if the citizens participate in the justice system. But regrettably, what happens far too many times, competent people are not permitted to serve, and so it doesn't afford all the parties the opportunity to have the best people sitting on the jury, and that has been my experience.
And I'm glad you brought that up about jury service and the responsibility of our citizens to participate. A lot of our citizens of brown and black color are disenfranchised in the process, and they're eliminated from jury duty, not just on the criminal sides of cases, but on the juvenile side of cases as well. And I think it's important to have people from all walks of life participate in Allegheny County in our court system. I just recently attended a continuing legal education seminar with Bruce Sankowiak, professor of law at St. Vincent's, and he was a former federal prosecutor. And the jury system in the federal process seems to get more of a diverse pool throughout Western Pennsylvania than, let's say, when I prosecuted in Allegheny County. And the judges need to be present, whereas in Allegheny County, many of the juries are selected with lay people, and the judges are not necessarily present. I've practiced in other counties throughout Western Pennsylvania, and Allegheny County is the exception, where the judges that are the trial court judges preside over jury selection. The juries that I've picked, both on the criminal and civil sides, take less time, and it's more user-friendly for the people that are coming there to the courthouse. Let's say the courthouse is like, for instance, in Jefferson County or Mercer County, even Lawrence County. They have free parking. What we pay our citizens to serve this civic duty in Allegheny County doesn't even pay for the parking. And so we've been talking about this systemic problem and implicit bias in selecting juries, not just on the criminal side, but on the civil side, but yet we've done nothing about it. And I think I've gotten a few gray hairs. We need to have people that are going to participate in a robust way, that want to be there, that want to sit in judgment of their peers. And they have to look like their peers. So, I think that we can use, again, our universities, the CMUs, the think tanks at Pitt, our professors, to come up with different ways to mine data, to get into the citizenry of the county and to all of the neighborhoods. There's 92 city neighborhoods. There's 130 municipalities. And that goes into understanding that if you have a dispute that's coming out of Natrona Heights or a dispute that's coming out of Mount Lebanon, those disputes merit equal attention. Again, I want to bring fair and equitable justice to every citizen every time. We're going to go now and talk about juvenile justice. And I've represented hundreds of juveniles in our juvenile justice system. It is a court system where you do not have the right to a trial by jury. The judge makes the decision, or a special master presiding as the judge would listen to those types of disputes. And they're initiated primarily through what we call the Juvenile Probation Department in association or conjunction with our district attorney's office. There are certain offenses that are excluded from the Juvenile Justice Act, homicide being one of them, and most of our major violent or sexual offenses likewise are excluded from the Juvenile Justice Act. That means that if an individual is over the age of 15, 16, 17 years of age and they commit one of these enumerated offenses, that they can be tried as an adult in the adult criminal system. And then there's a process called decertification, where the defense attorney then has to present a petition to the court, and there are certain criteria that have to be established by a preponderance of the evidence. There are certain factors that are statutorily designated. And right now, Judge Anthony Mariani is the presiding judge in many of these what we call decertification or transfer hearings. We're going to take a little break now again to go to our next segment, which would be tying into some of the reforms that I have in mind for our juvenile justice system. Again, my name is Bill Caye. I'm running for Court of Common Pleas, and we'll be right back with Caye for Judge on Monday night. Our courts have to reflect our communities. I endeavor to bring that experience in the community for our county to serve all citizens with equal justice every time. I understand the compelling issues of inclusivity and diversity in our court system, and that's why I am passionate about bringing juror reform. I'm Bill Caye, and I'm asking for your vote for judge for the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas on May 18th. Back with Caye for Judge on Monday night. I want to give a shout out to our fundraiser, Caye Thierikoff. She's mentioned in the inbox that you can go online to williamcaye.com, and the information is provided there if you would like to help the campaign with some support. Again, I'm joined in the studio with my Secretary and Chief of Staff, Kevin McGuire. We left off talking about some juvenile justice issues. Some of the questions that I get from the clients that I've represented in the past and from citizens on the street asking about why is there almost a presumption of guilt or a presumption of delinquency in our juvenile justice system. It's kind of interesting because I've had a chance to reflect in a balanced way as a professional. I have prosecuted individuals that were young adults coming out of the juvenile system. They have had a revolving door in this process, and it's kind of unfair to begin with. It's set up to do what it's set up to do, which is to lead to a state of incarceration or detention. Some of the facilities that I've had the privilege to venture to visit, both as a prosecutor to talk to witnesses or to investigate crimes in the institutions themselves, they need to be modernized. A lot of the living conditions are difficult. The children are taken miles from their families. The support structure is broken. And you got to remember, most of the kids have come into the system because of something that's wrong. Maybe there's an undiagnosed dual diagnosis. They could be suffering some mental health issues. Again, the child's mind is not developed cognitively. We're finding studies now in science that say that many individuals are not acting their age, so to speak, to break it down in layman's terms. And so what does it all mean when somebody is alleged to be a delinquent? When a petition is filed, the probation office gets involved, the district attorney gets involved. There's usually a public defender or conflict counsel. I've served as conflict counsel here in Allegheny County, which means if a public defender is representing a co-defendant, the public defender cannot represent all of the defendants in the case. So then the private counsel is always afforded, if the individual has the resources, to then represent the child in the adjudicative stages. And there's pre-adjudicative stages. In Allegheny County, you can have an informal adjustment, meaning that the judge and the probation officer sort of hold off on the charges, maybe get the child into a treatment plan, maybe put them on home monitoring with intense supervision. Again, probation has a lot of authority probably in the juvenile system as compared on the front end of these situations. And we have, a tight-knit criminal defense practice bar here. And many of the practitioners sort of specialize in that area. You see some of the same attorneys, the same public defenders. There's a lot of consistency for the courts. You have the same judges, the same probation officers. Again, it's sort of regionalized. And why I'm bringing that up is that I think we're wasting our resources and we're not getting the results that are warranted because we should be focusing on being more proactive. Judges need to get beyond the bench. They need to be problem solvers in the community. I think that bringing into the school systems, whether they're public schools or private schools or charter schools, some type of curriculum where you can understand the civic recourse and duties that the courts are involved in. I think sometimes children can look at those courts then as a career path. Maybe they'd want to be a probation officer or a caseworker. Maybe they'd want to be a prosecutor or a defense lawyer. Maybe they'd want to be a law clerk, or maybe perhaps even run for judge like I'm running for judge. Again, my name is William Bill Caye. I'm going to be on both the Republican Democratic ballots for the primary on May 18th. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas here in Allegheny County. I'm joined here on the Caye for Judge Committee with my Chief of Staff, Kevin McGuire, and we're talking why Caye, but more importantly, we're answering the questions of the citizens of Allegheny County about access to justice and juvenile justice. We're going to go take another short break. We're going to come back and we're going to answer some of the questions that have popped up in our inbox. Thank you for joining us. We'll be right back. Our courts have to reflect our communities. I endeavor to bring that experience in the community for our county to serve all citizens with equal justice every time. I understand the compelling issues of inclusivity and diversity in our court system, and that's why I am passionate about bringing juror reform. I'm Bill Caye, and I'm asking for your vote for judge for the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas on May 18th. So we're back in the studio Monday nights with the Caye for Judge Committee. I'm William Bill Caye. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas here in Allegheny County. And on our last segment, we were talking a little bit about juvenile justice and about accessible justice in our court system here in Allegheny County. We're now going to talk about some jury reforms that we've had in mind here. As a candidate for Court of Common Pleas judge back in 2015, and I came very close to winning one of those seats. One of the messages that we brought out to our communities was the need for jury reform. And that requires a concerted effort. It requires teamwork amongst the judges. It requires coordination amongst the legislature to try to get some funding for the courts. You know, a lot of the programs that are funded by the courts are funded on the backs of individuals that are brought before the court. It's their assessments. I look at it almost as though it's a cottage industry where you have all of these special assessments and fees, but yet we're still working in the red. We're not out in front of the problem. The district attorney's offices, the prosecutor's offices have special funding and grants. They have a bevy of resources in their budget compared to the court system. And even if we take a look at the other side of the case from the defense perspective, now we're having to see that it's time to level the playing field. And we need to not just get tough on crime, but we have to be smart on it. And we have to do this through a concerted effort of looking at what our courts need to look like for the next 10 or 20 years. We cannot afford to take baby steps anymore. We need to take bold steps. We need to be strong in our commitment to people, to serving all of the people equally every time. One of the reforms that I've been mentioning, and one of the things that I think is resonating with people here in Allegheny County is, well, why have they not been called to jury duty? Or if they have been called to jury duty, why have they not been selected? Or why do they continually get selected on jury duty? Well, those are three different scenarios. And I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I'd like to say that there's questionnaires that are there in our court system that have been approved by the Supreme Court and the Rules Committee. And lawyers are able to ask those questions of individuals that are brought down and subpoenaed for jury duty. Typically in Allegheny County, we have jury duty going on pretty much every day in the court's calendar. I don't think that's the best use of our resources and the taxpayers. I think what we should try to do is segment cases by using the community-based courts that I've modeled, but also to then bring the most serious, the most violent of cases where there's critical thought involved, where there's significant stakes and jail time involved, and where the parties have to have some time to litigate and spend the focused resources and time and energies on getting it right for the right reason. A lot of our magisterial district courts here in Allegheny County that function in the communities actually can be a conduit to this community-based courts that I'm modeling. And what I mean by that is there's a jurisdiction over crimes that are low-level, non-violent, sort of small amounts of marijuana, public drunkenness, charges that are no greater than a misdemeanor of the third degree, and of course our summary offenses. It's how we charge things. It's how we couch things that allows us to restore that justice to the community that's been impacted, to the individuals that have suffered the harm right then and there, instead of pushing it downtown, a one-size-fits-all assembly line, into the Court of Common Pleas, where judges from Mount Lebanon hear cases from East Liberty, where judges from Squirrel Hill hear cases from Wilkinsburg, and there's a disjunct, there's a disconnect, because those individuals have not been in these communities. They have not been in the communities that they've served, despite the authority and powers that they have vested in them by virtue of being a judge, a member of an independent, co-equal branch of our government. And it has to be responsive to the citizens, all of the citizens. We have a growing population of Asians and Indians in our community that come for the schools, that come for the universities, that come for the opportunities, like my parents and grandparents came to this country for those similar opportunities in the city of Pittsburgh, which is viewed as a melting pot. But yet when you go down to the courthouse, it does not reflect all of these ethnic groups. It does not reflect all of the different diversity that needs to be included in our court system. I've worked in our communities, both in the private sector and the public sector. I've worked with the communities on nonprofits and in academic settings. I'm able to relate to people from all walks of life because I've served people from all walks of life. So it's going to take that concerted effort of electing somebody like myself to the bench if we really want to talk change, if we really want to get results. Again, my name is William Bill Caye. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas here in Allegheny County. I'm filed on the Republican and the Democratic sides. We're going to cut to a break. We're going to come back with some questions from the audience, and we're going to be talking to our Secretary and Chief of Staff, Kevin McGuire. Again, thank you for joining us. If you would like to donate, you can go to our website at williamcaye.com. I'm reminded again by shouting out to Caye Thiroff, our fundraiser for the Caye for Judge Committee, and we'll be right back to take your questions. Thank you. Our courts have to reflect our communities. I endeavor to bring that experience in the community for our county to serve all citizens with equal justice every time. I understand the compelling issues of inclusivity and diversity in our court system, and that's why I am passionate about bringing juror reform. I'm Bill Caye, and I'm asking for your vote for judge for the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas on May 18th. Hey, thank you for joining us. It's Monday evening. It's the Caye for Judge Committee. We're on the campaign trail. I'm joined in the studio by Kevin McGuire, our Chief of Staff, and our Secretary of the Caye for Judge Committee. We just came back from probably one of those commercial breaks. You've been seeing one of our ads that's been produced by Michael Bartley. It's shot at the Oak Creation Studios right here in the south side of Pittsburgh. We're in the studio at Mass Solutions over at Gateway Center in downtown Pittsburgh, shooting the Caye for Judge show on Monday nights. When we left off, we were talking about community-based impacts to our citizenry here in Allegheny County and how these specialty courts can be moved into the regions, the north, south, east, and west of our county, and integrate a greater transparency of justice, a greater accessibility of justice, and we could save resources that are being wasted downtown Pittsburgh with 43 judges sitting routinely, letting the work come to them. I think it's time, from what the people have been saying to us on the campaign trail, what they've been interacting with us on our website. They want to know why the judges aren't seen more in their community. Why do the police officers have to waste time going downtown to Pittsburgh? Why do we have to pay for that exorbitant parking in the city of Pittsburgh, sit around all day, and then wait for a case to be then postponed and we're told to come back later? Well, again, part of my reforms on the accessibility side deal with, well, how do we deal with people with disabilities in our court system? The Allegheny County Courthouse is a pretty old and historic landmark, but do we find it user-friendly? Are we using our technology like we are now in this pandemic to ease the process, to allow greater affordability of accessibility in different ways? What does it mean to schedule things in a flex time or extended evening hours to accommodate people that might be stuck between taking care of their children at school, working a day job, working an evening job, and then having to take care of their parents in some, senior assisted living? Well, it just doesn't function 9 to 5. And I think, again, one of the things that I've been hearing from the people that are resonating my messages, that they're tired of the same old same. They would like to see some extra weekend hours, maybe sessions every other weekend on a Saturday morning, where they can come in and the court can give them their full undivided attention. No more cattle call scheduling. Let's use slot time. Let's use algorithms. Let's use data-driven research to promote a responsive and a productive court system that gets results for all the people all the time. Kevin, one of the questions that's come up is, well, why now? Like, why is it time for these reforms to the communities? And maybe you could share with our viewing audience this evening some of the things that the people have been saying to the Caye for Judge Committee when we go out to, like, the business districts. Like, we were just out in Oakmont, I think, past Saturday and Sunday, interacting with the folks in the Alikiski Valley. Could you tell us some of the remarks that we were getting from some of those citizens?
I think that what we learn when we interact with the citizens of Allegheny County is their concerns about the increase in crime in their neighborhoods, and how it impacts their ability to function with regard to the quiet enjoyment of their home, their family, their friends. It becomes an overriding concern that people have that something bad is going to happen to them. And so that seems to be an overriding concern. People do not see any pathway for improvement. And so that's the system that we have at present, and it's a system that we either change or we can expect more of the same.
Well, thank you for that feedback, Kevin. And one of the things that, to follow up on some of your points, I think it's assumed oftentimes that people actually know what Court of Common Pleas judges do. Every few years there's elections for judges in the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County, and there are various divisions in the Court of Common Pleas. Many folks are familiar with the family division if they've experienced a divorce situation or a custody situation. Maybe it's a domestic violence situation where a PFA has been issued. Those types of matters are resolved by judges that are assigned to the family division here in the Court of Common Pleas. But there are other divisions that sometimes people do not find themselves in. Many times people do not find themselves in a Court of Common Pleas courtroom at all. I mean, they can go their entire life without even being called for jury duty, without being called as a witness, without being either a plaintiff or a defendant in an automobile accident. Let's take the civil division. Judges sit in the civil division and they can hear appeals from the magistrate courts on housing issues, whether or not there's been a mortgage foreclosure action. They can resolve disputes concerning grievances in the workplace if somebody's been terminated allegedly in a wrongful manner. If there was a contractual breach, two people setting aside a business, a corporate dispute. Those are the types of typical day-to-day decisions that judges make in the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas in the civil division. There's also what's called our orphans court, sometimes referred to as probate court. And that deals with disputes that arise usually after somebody passes, when they've expired or died, and they've left a will or they did not have a will. Family members or next of kin sort of resolve the disputes over how the statute says that in the absence of a will, the property that was part of the estate at the time of the individual's death, how that passes. And there can be, again, preliminary objections, there can be challenges, there can be exceptions filed. Those types of disputes take time. Again, that's not something that a judge is going to have to do in the abstract. The judge is going to have to bring real-world experience, having to have litigated, understanding the law, the motions involved, the emotions of the people. What actually is a good compromise? Negotiating those types of settlements. So judges have to not just focus on the proactive side of things or the reactive side of things. They have to be balanced. I've offered a balanced career of 28 years working in the private and public sector, working on all sides of cases, both as a plaintiff's attorney and as a defense attorney. I've started my own business. I've reinvented my business. I've come back into the public sector and prosecuted at a high level with felony crimes, dealing with protecting our seniors, our most vulnerable members of our society, our children, and of course women in domestic violence situations or sexual assaults. That sort of specialty work lended itself to allowing me to come out now and become a consultant to offer solutions to our municipal entities, to our small governments, our little boroughs or cities, such as the folks out in York or Lancaster. I've been asked to come in and troubleshoot in terms of internal conflict counsel, how to run the office, how to allocate resources, what types of people do we want to hire and train, what kinds of lawyers and what kinds of backgrounds do we need to actually serve the citizens that require that office to defend them. Again, because the Constitution on the criminal side and juvenile side says that if you cannot afford an attorney, the law will provide one. The courts usually appoint me in those cases. Sometimes I'm dealing with somebody that's fired 3 or 4 lawyers. Sometimes I'm dealing with somebody that's been in the system their whole entire life because they've been there because of drug addictions or mental health problems. So again, coming into the community-based courts, don't you think it would be important for the judges in our courts to actually recognize through data, through proven research and observations, that many of the people tying up the business of the courts day to day are really not acting out because they're criminals. Their problem is that they have an illness. They have a disease. One of the things that one of our campaign staffers likes to say, I think his name's Timmy Santrum, we'll give him a shout out because he's queuing us up out there. But Timmy always says, you know, a lot of these people could use a hand up, a lift up, to not enable them to come back into the system, but to get them that help that they need by sending them to a facility that might be able to restore some dignity and balance to their lives, to get them on the right medication so that they're not out there dealing with fentanyl issues. Recent experience out there in Bloomfield, we were campaigning out in the Bloomfield section of the city of Pittsburgh. We came across a coffee house, a small business owner, and he shared some private time with us and brought up the fact that, you know, he had a child that got caught up in the addiction and overdosed. It was a fatality. A young man caught, you know, before he even was able to live his life. He had so much potential. And he's asking himself, well, how far does it have to get before our judges realize that we need to have our courts communicating, educating people, steering them and diverting them outside of the criminal justice process. So we're going to go back to another break. We're going to come back with some questions. We're saving up some time at the very end to talk to you directly about anything that we've brought up this evening. This is Bill Caye. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County. I'm on both the Republican and Democratic ballots. I'm joined in the studio by Kevin McGuire, our Chief of Staff. Again, shout out to Caye Thiroff, our fundraiser. She's reminding me to tell our audience to go to the WilliamCaye.com website. You can take a look at the information, all the endorsements, all of the citizens that are supporting us, all of the vetting that we've gone through in various competitions with the Allegheny County Democratic Committee, the Allegheny County Labor Council, the Teamsters Joint Council. Today we just recently received an endorsement from the Allegheny County Sheriff's Deputy Association. Again, it's the Caye for Judge Committee on Facebook. Check us out. We'll be right back after these messages. Our courts have to reflect our communities. I endeavor to bring that experience in the community for our county to serve all citizens with equal justice every time. I understand the compelling issues of inclusivity and diversity in our court system, and that's why I am passionate about bringing juror reform. I'm Bill Caye, and I'm asking for your vote for judge for the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas on May 18th. So we're back on Monday nights live Facebook with the Caye for Judge Committee. I'm William Bill Caye. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas here in Allegheny County. Our last segment, we were talking about some of the problems underlying the courts and inability to adjust or to make these transformations about balanced and restorative justice that we're talking about. As a candidate, I want to go to a question that came in during the break from one of our friends out there in Brookline, Mickey Trapolsky. How are you, Mickey? Thanks for the question. Mickey's asking me in terms of, I've done a lot of work with youth sports, and I've done a lot of work with special needs children, kids on the spectrum, promoting awareness, trying to educate people, and giving people second chances. And her question is, do you see the Court of Common Pleas taking more of a proactive stance towards dealing with children with intellectual disabilities and giving them opportunities to repay their debt to society and the community? Absolutely. To answer your question, I certainly feel that that's warranted. I think that, again, playing on the magisterial district court system and allowing judges to come out to these regional facilities that would create a multidisciplinary type facility where you can have people there with the expertise to deal with children on the spectrum that requires special training and education. If there are individuals suffering from addictions, whether they're prescriptive medications or whether they're street drugs, I think there's a pathway for those individuals to work in this restorative justice model in the community-based court system by diverting the resources to the front end of the problem so that we can make sure that we're not repeating the same mistakes of the past administrations. One of the other things that I kind of think is unique is that if we have these central courts, many of the courts systems that I practice in outside of Allegheny County, they have magisterial district courts, central courts, where they bring all of the cases in on certain days from certain geographical areas so that there's a continuity of understanding. There's no disjunct in the communication between, let's say, probation and police officers, district attorneys, defense lawyers, and judges. And by sitting in the circuit or riding the circuit in rotations, what I think is that everyone would share that responsibility to become accountable to all the citizens. They would actually have familiarity with the communities to understand the complexities and the underlying mechanisms, because again, a problem that arises in Mount Lebanon is probably somewhat different than a similar problem that arises in Wilkinsburg. And we have to realize that. Again, we can be doing more with less. We can be utilizing the technologies. We can be utilizing the research and the data. In terms of being tough on crime, yes, absolutely. Violent offenders need to be make sure that the public is safe from these individuals that are preying on children or preying on women, that might be abusing animals. I did some cases in the Attorney General's office where there were some fighting rings. There was also some environmental crimes. I think that's another issue, Kevin. I think we were up at the Valley. People that are working in the mills, they're very sensitive to the job issues, but the people in the community that live there have reached out to me. Folks from Glassport and Portview know my family out there, the Gatus Law Firm, and they were asking about some class action lawsuits dealing with some particles that were released in the environment. And I says, well, yeah, I think that, judges in the civil division here in Allegheny County would hear those types of cases. And certainly you'd want to be balanced and fair, and you'd want the lawyers to present their cases. You would listen to all of the evidence. You'd listen to the arguments presented by counsel, and you would want those folks to leave that courtroom knowing that you did justice, that you came to a decision for the right reason. Even if they disagreed with that decision, that's why we have appellate courts, but they would have left and said, hey, that judge really listened. That judge gave me my day in court. So again, if you're looking for somebody that's going to bring fair and equitable justice to the citizens of Allegheny County every time, without exception, remember to vote for Bill Caye. It'll be William Bill Caye on the ballot, both Republican side and Democratic side, on May 18th. Now, again, there's going to be early voting, so if you get your ballot and you want to send it in early through the mail, it's still going to be William Bill Caye. It's going to be on the Republican side and the Democratic side. Remember my name. Vote for Caye for change in the justice system. We're going to change the status quo. We're going to bring balanced and restorative justice, and we're going to be fair and equitable for every citizen every time. I want to take a pause, and I want to give a special shout out and recognize the folks on the Caye for Judge Committee. We have Honorary Chair, retired Judge Timothy Patrick O'Reilly. We have Honorary Chairs Bob Malassi from South Fayette Township, a former commissioner. I'd worked with Bob on the library board. He got me involved in community organizing and helping people learn about programs that the library offered. I also wanted to give a shout out to Reno Virgili, a longtime family friend, is a businessman. One of the platforms for the Caye for Judge Committee is to be sensitive to small business owners in the court system. So again, we're not just talking the talk with the Caye for Judge Committee, we're walking the walk. And of course, we have inclusivity and diversity and folks from all walks of life. My chair, Olivia Harris, from the 13th Ward of the city of Pittsburgh. She asked me today when I was prepping for this first of its kind live Facebook show, she says, well, Billy, what are you going to do for the folks out in the city of Pittsburgh's East End? You know, sometimes the senior population is afraid to leave their house because of the gunshots, the violence with the young folks and guns and drugs. And I said, Olivia, we're going to bring a court out there to the eastern suburbs. We're going to bring specialized, educated workers that are going to work hard. They're going to roll up their sleeves. We're going to get results. We're going to listen to what the citizens want done in their court system. So I pledged that to her, and that's part of my honest communication. I have selfless service. I've been working in the court system as an attorney here in Pennsylvania for 28 years. I've been at every level of government, from the city on up to the federal government. I've worked in every branch of government, our judiciary, our legislature, and yes, our enforcement or executive branch. As a prosecutor, both as an assistant district attorney and as a senior deputy attorney general. I've tried many cases to verdict, countless individuals I've represented privately, and I've done my fair share of pro bono work. Again, lawyers have to give. That's part of our job. That's part of our duty. That's an ethical component of being a lawyer, being of service to others. And as a judge, it should be no different. We have to put on our ties. We have to put on our robes. We have a title. But at the end of the day, we reflect the people. That's the people's courtroom. We're stewards of the people's work. And we have to do right by the people. Not just when we feel like it, but all of the time, without exception. We have to give people the opportunity to present their disputes, to let their lawyers present arguments, and to make well-reasoned, balanced decisions. And we should not be afraid to communicate those decisions. That's how people get misunderstandings about what judges do or do not do, is because there's a failure to communicate. Judges should have to articulate the reasons for their decisions, even if they're saying, hey, look, I'm going to take this one under advisement, and I will get an order and opinion out to you to resolve this case within a week's time. So again, I think bringing in my experience of working in the court system, working for judges, helping other judges do the job of judging, I'm understanding of people. I have that empathetic, compassionate basis because I've represented folks that clearly committed a criminal act, but they weren't criminals. They made an exercise, lapse in judgment. They had a bad day. They needed a second chance. They didn't need to be incarcerated and have the judge, slam the door shut on the jail, because again, our jails are overcrowded with people that are in nonviolent capacities, people with mental health issues, people with addictions. The jails are not the answers for those people, at least not the jails in their current configuration. So again, when it comes time to balancing justice and having restorative justice, let's make sure we're clear on what we're talking about. Violent offenders versus nonviolent offenders. People that have had second or third chances versus people that this is their first time in the system. Younger offenders that haven't quite developed the skill sets that are necessary. People like that deserve second chances. Now, other individuals that have been time and time again in front of other judges, they've had probation or they've had some county jail time, and then they're out there robbing senior citizens on the first of the month when they know that they have their checks. They're following them from the bank. that's a problem. We can't have that. We need to have balanced, restorative justice in our court system. Remember my name, William Bill Caye. I'll be running for the Court of Common Pleas here in Allegheny County on both the Republican and Democratic ballots on May 18th. I want to just, again, thank my committee. This was all made possible. Tammy Gatis Caye, our vice chair, she's our deputy field director. Timmy Sandstrom, our deputy campaign manager. Of course, my able chief of staff and secretary, Kevin McGuire. I want to give a shout out to Mass Solutions for allowing us to use the studio. I didn't forget Caye, our fundraiser. She again tells us to go to the website at williamcaye.com. It'll give you all the information there if somebody wants to help our campaign. If you want to volunteer, if you want to make phone calls, if you want a yard sign, all those questions, just reach out to our website, williamcaye.com. And last but not least, the guy that kept it all together in the studio, Marcel, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. We look forward to doing a few more of these podcasts on Monday night. Look for us on April 19th and May 10th for 2 more exciting episodes of Caye for Judge. Thank you. Good night. Our courts have to reflect our communities. I endeavor to bring that experience in the community for our county to serve all citizens with equal justice every time. I understand the compelling issues of inclusivity and diversity in our court system, and that's why I am passionate about bringing juror reform. I'm Bill Caye, and I'm asking for your vote for judge for the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas on May 18th.